Treliving came to the Toronto Maple Leafs this offseason and did work. Elliotte Friedman recently spoke in an interview about Treliving and the Leafs, and we'll discuss this interview and break it all down for you, so you're not going to want to miss this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into that, we just want to say that 95.7% of you guys aren't subscribed, so if you're looking for a home to daily NHL and Leafs content, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the topic of this video, which is Treliving and the Leafs have a plan for the future. And yes, like we said, Elliotte Friedman was recently on Sportsnet, the fan, 590 The Fan, and he came out and spoke about Treliving's moves this offseason. He said, I don't think Treliving is afraid of shaking too much up, and I don't think that's the issue. He also says, if you take a look at the way this year is going, it's shaping up as a year where a lot could change over the next 12 months if it doesn't go well. And he talked about all of the contract flexibility that Treliving has given himself, and specifically pointed to the predicted future increase in salary cap. And he also says here, I actually think that what we're looking at right now is kind of concentrated plans that Treliving is going to come in. He's made some decisions, he's made some changes, but I think a lot of the big decisions are going to be punted over the next year. He also says Friedman started to cite specific players and said that the Leafs are 1 year away from the end of the Tavares and Marner contracts, and those are two big contracts that the Leafs might make a determination on. He also talks about Domi and Samsonov, as you know, they're kind of going into their last contract as well, and they will be evaluated this season to be extended next year. They also go on to talk about Bertuzzi here, and if Bertuzzi gets off to a hot start, Friedman seems to be predicting that both sides will talk about contracts extension well before the season is out. But obviously, you don't want him to be playing too well because they won't be able to extend him, Friedman says in this as well. And he also says Friedman appears to be saying here is that Treliving wanted to add, which he did, and he took steps to improve the club, which he did. But he also let himself an out in the event that some of these signings don't pan out. So, and as we take a look here, Friedman says, with Nylander, Bertuzzi, Domi, Brody, Klingberg, Giordano, Samsonov, all on expiring deals. That's a lot of players. I'm just looking at it right now. He says that's a lot of money out in the summer where the cap is going up and will give the Leafs a lot of room to be serious bidders in free agency. Mark, I know that was a lot of information, but what are your initial thoughts to Friedman's comments here this week?
Yeah, like you've seen when Kyle Dubas was in Toronto, he kind of had this sense of, I'm rolling with the core four. We trust him. We want to do our thing with him. But you see Brad come in, and it's almost a situation where you could see a huge shakeup. Obviously, if Nylander's not extended, that's a guy that I could 100% see getting moved. Not that I want him moved. I think he's an incredible player. But it kind of comes down to the situation. He came in, you can see that he's making his mark on this team with a guy like Bertuzzi, Reeves, Domi, Klingberg. He's adding his own touch to this team. And I don't think he's worried in the sense of if someone's not performing, if they need goaltending help. I think, he is going to make a massive splash this year. It could be at deadline. It could be during Christmas. It could even be before if an injury happens. But no, I definitely think, the Leafs organization's kind of in this mindset now where it's like, hey, we give these four guys all our trust. We do trust them, but we're at the point now where we're not succeeding where we want to, and we have higher hopes for this team. And I think, this could be a major shakeup at some point.
Yeah, and I think this is a very smart move on Treliving's half. I think, having that flexibility where you have I think it was 6 or 7 guys all on expiring deals that, if this season doesn't work out as you hope it does, I mean, obviously he has the faith in Sheldon Keefe and the coaching staff extending him the other day. So, if it's not working out on the ice, then next year, they can just, let some of these guys walk, which in the past, Toronto has been keen to extending these bottom 6 type players. So, you can kind of get these new free agents in and see if it works in the system.
Yeah, you never want to get stuck in the situation where you have a bad contract, you can't move on. I mean, you look at Patrick Marleau when the Leafs had to move a first-round pick to get off that $6 million contract. So yeah, a lot of the guys he signed, minus Reeves, who was a 3-year deal. You look at Domi, Bertuzzi, Klingberg. It's just three guys. They have 1-year deals. It's almost like a prove yourself, show that you fit this organization. And if they don't, I mean, you move them at deadline. You can let them walk in free agency, and if things are working well, you can extend them. With all those contracts up, you look at a guy like Brody making 5 million. Tavares in 2 years, he will take a little less. I think Brody could be a guy you see like a 3-year deal, maybe 3, 4 million, so he takes a tiny bit less money. And with the cap going up, I think the Leafs are going to be serious buyers, not just in free agency, but at deadline and in situations where you get these veteran guys that could almost step up now, push the team, and ultimately win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and like this offseason, we've seen him take the risk on, players like Domi and Bertuzzi, like they stated in this article. But, I think, it's a risk you're willing to take because it's only a 1 year deal. And if it works out, then you can extend them. Like, you can, if they're playing well and, they love playing in Toronto, it's going to be, they can just extend them through, a couple more seasons if they're playing well. I know a lot of these deals are, sorry, in the lower end of value, but if you got these players who are playing well, you can just extend them for a little bit more money. And I think with the cap going up, I think Toronto's in a great situation. I think, Nylander will be extended as well. And like you said, if not, they may look to trade him. But you never know what's going to happen here. The Leafs, I think, this is a big if, if they don't play well, where the season hasn't even started yet. And we're talking as if they're a big failure. But, I think this team has a lot of success in ahead of them. I think with Treliving kind of adding that West Coast vibe to the team with players like Reeves and these gritty players like Bertuzzi and Domi. I think this is really just going to help the Leafs get out of the East.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm almost willing to bet we see at some point throughout the season either Bertuzzi or Domi signed to an extension. I don't know if they're going to fully go in on both guys right away, but I could see Bertuzzi, taking a 5 or 6 year deal. I'm not sure what the AAV would be kind of situation how he's playing, or I think Domi might get a 3, 4, 5 year deal extension too, especially if they're gelling well and fitting in. I mean, I do want to see the Domi and Mitch line together, just kind of get the juniors team back together. But yeah, no, it's this situation where you have so much cap space going in. I kind of worry a tiny bit that, they might be like, hey, we need a lot of veterans. And when you start adding a lot of veterans to term, that's when you get into the situation where, 2, 3 years down the road, when, you still have Matthews in his prime, you might get tight against the cap again with aging guys that aren't really fully fitting. Which, I mean, as you being a Montreal fan, if you're coming out of a rebuild, 3, 4 years down the road, the Leafs have all these, 35-year-olds that aren't performing well. That's, a situation where you could see Montreal really take that next step and jump Toronto in the standings. But overall, I think right now, management's doing an incredible job. They're adding what we need, they still have assets, they can flip them. I'm just worried, we start selling the future too fast for guys that are going to kind of take a toll on their body sooner than rather.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's the risk you take because obviously Toronto's in a really good spot to go out and compete for a Stanley Cup, and it's kind of the risk you take with adding some of these older players. But like we said, the great thing that Treliving has done here is sign them to 1 year deals, and like you said, players like Domi and Bertuzzi are still relatively young. They're not into their 30s yet, so if they are extended for another 3 to 4 years, I think it could really help this team, and I think we'll see them extended maybe once the Nylander extension, gets out of the way, and maybe the Marner extension gets out of the way. But you want to leave that money and cap there for those players. But like I don't really think that Toronto's in a bad situation right now. I really do think that they're going to have a successful season, and I think adding these gritty players and adding such defensive depth like we talked about here in the past, I think they're in for a really good season.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's gonna be exciting too, because as I said previously, Dubas came in. He had his four guys that he trusted. He didn't want to move them. He said, we're going with this core. I trust this core. And I mean, ultimately, they did let him down 2 years in a row. But I think it's a situation now where management's going to go fully in. We're going to see this completely different, revamped management come through where, if you're not performing, if they need to upgrade in some spot, they're not just kind of sit, wait, pick up a guy like Matt Murray. I think they're just going to go fully to the wall and just, acquire what they need for this team.
Yeah, and one thing that this whole situation with Treliving kind of reminds me of is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay had their four guys. They have Vasilevsky, Hedman, Stamkos, and Kucherov, and they still had their bottom six was guys that they had on 1 year expiring deals, or players that they had signed to their entry level contracts, or their first RFA extensions. So and you see what they did. They won. So I think this is kind of the mindset that Treliving has brought to Toronto, and a mindset that Toronto hasn't seen in a GM in a long time, and I think it's really going to help the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially with the entry level guys, you see guys like Bobby McMahon coming up, Toppy's coming up through the system on defense. But it's kind of this situation where you can have all these great players, but you still need those small contracts, like a Matthew Nyes contract that, is more value than his actual contract number is. I mean, if he's making 1 million and he's performing like a $5 million player, obviously you wouldn't want to replace him with a $5 million player doing the same, performance. So you definitely need those, younger guys on the entry level contracts or really cheap deals, the prove myself deals, kind of like a Domi deal, to outperform these contracts just to, elevate your game and still have that extra cap space to work around.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what we've seen with the past couple cup winners. There's those unsung heroes that come up and they step up like in the late in the playoffs, especially that year, the COVID year, Montreal went on the run. Caulfield kind of came in and stepped up, but that's just one example. We're just gonna say sorry, Leafs fans, but we're gonna get into our next topic here, which is of course comment of the day, and the comment of the day today goes to GR, when he says Arizona is on the come up, and that obviously was in relation to our video yesterday. I do think Arizona's on the come up. What do you think, Mark?
I, I mean, there's no going further down, so I guess they have to move up at some point. I think Arizona's a young, talented team. They have a lot of young guys, but I wouldn't, bet money on them being competing anytime soon.
No, they still got a couple of years ahead of them, but we're here for you, Arizona fans. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like down below. Make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before the season starts, and we love to see that happen. And make sure to comment down below what your thoughts on this whole article, that Elliotte Friedman's comments and stuff. We'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts on this is. Obviously, from what me and Mark have been saying, we think this is just great news. I think it's something different in Toronto, and I think change isn't always bad. Change is good. So if you guys enjoyed this one, like I said, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've been KC alongside my co-host Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.